The mission statement of our company, WorkNet Solutions, is to increase the effectiveness and the joy of people who are providing employment services. Our model says it all, the name of our model: career development and job placement for people with barriers. We are not just about job placement. When we first started as Foothill Jobs, way back when in Pasadena in 1984, we were just about jobs. And people would come in, and we'd say, you know, pick a job, any job, here's a couple leads, and they'd pick one, and we'd stick them in it, and they'd come back 3 days later, maybe 3 weeks later, ooh, if we were lucky, 3 months later, and we'd pick a job, any job, and we'd stick them in it. And we realized we might have been slowing the revolving door, but we weren't changing anybody's life. And in fact, we used to jokingly say that we are, in fact, very good at helping people with extreme barriers to employment get a job. We are so good at that, we can place the same person like 3, 4, 5 times a year. We're that good. It was a little depressing. You know, you want to see them back as volunteers, but you don't want to see them coming back for the same stuff over and over again. Job placement is really important. How many of you are working with people who need an income? You know, they got bills due, they got past stuff haunting them. They can't think straight because this is just up in their face. Job placement is really important, and we need to make that a part of what we do. But we start with career development. And that is this big picture of completely redefining, for so many of the people that we serve, redefining work. I actually had the chance to work with a young man. I was the guest expert on a Ricky Lake show years ago now at this point. The show was called Men Who Don't Think They Should Have to Work and the Women Who Love Them. It was very interesting couples that day that I met. It really wasn't about work, but they wanted it to be about work. I'm the author of No One is Unemployable, so they flew me in, and I was their little guest expert, right? I got to meet a young man named John. He was 19 at the time, fairly young, not as much to undo as sometimes people need to have undone. But he'd worked before. He'd worked for 3.5 months at a deli at some point, and so he had experienced work, enough to know that it really wasn't for him. But in John's mind, working was doing something you don't like, with a bunch of people you don't even like to be with, in a place you don't like going, for too many hours and not enough pay. Who wants to work? I mean, I wouldn't want a job if that was my experience and kind of the word on my street about what work was. But that's what he thought about work. In fact, similar to the story that Sandy was sharing, which I so appreciated about Ed, in talking with John, we were tapping into some of his fascinations and some of the skills he had right now. And it turns out he loves to work with animals. I said, well, you know, John, people get paid to work with animals. You love to go to the zoo. You could go to the you could actually work at the zoo. You know, some of those people at the zoo, John, they don't have to pay to get in. Some of those people at the zoo actually get paid to go to the zoo. You could get paid to go to the zoo. And he looked at me like, what are you talking about? I said, they work there, John. You could work at the zoo. And he looked at me and he said, oh, but that's not a real job. Why not? Too interesting? Get too fun? Not loathsome enough? Well, yeah. I said, no, I think if they pay, yeah, we'll call it a real job. Yeah, okay. Just never thought of it. So we start with this idea of career development, which in many ways means redefining work and the role it can play in your life. For many Americans, for many people, work is something you endure to get somebody off your back, that it can add something more to your life than just a paycheck. It can allow you to do work that is fascinating to you, to meet people that are interesting, to make a difference, to be that role model that you want to be, to learn or grow or travel or give back, whatever it may be, that work can be this really wonderful experience that adds a lot to their life. So we have a model of career development, starting with that big picture, and yeah, by the way, as soon as we can, job placement in a way that makes a lot of sense for who you are and where you're going. And again, our passion is for people with barriers, and that we all have barriers to employment. We all do. And as we overcome them and get into the world of work, the truth is, new ones sprout up. If you decide that, well, rather than being just the worker, you think you might want to lead one day, well, now you might need to go and take a class, get a mentor, maybe change the way you dress or the way that you conduct yourself on the job. So we're always identifying and overcoming the things that will hold us back. The truth is, the WorkNet model is really comprehensive. And one of the questions that I'm sure will come up is how do we do all this? And do we have to do all this? And what are the options? I think especially with our programs here in America and the tools that we've created, we have really fought to make this very flexible, very doable, especially for small programs. So you don't have to do it all, or at least you don't have to do it all right now. And partnering up or maybe filling a gap in your community is a great way to go. But here's our big picture. We start with Foundations for Success. There are some dynamics that run through the course of our entire model and into their experience in the workforce. Dealing with fear. We all have our fear factor. One of our experiences has been, even in working with people at high levels, we've got candidates who have been job candidates, we call them, laid off from the best job they've ever had, making more money than I'm probably ever going to make. And all of a sudden that job is outsourced, offshored, gone. And their daughter's engaged to be married for a wedding, in a wedding I can no longer pay for. And the fear factor is just huge. We work with people straight off the prison yard. We work with people before they even get off the prison yard. And the world has changed since they've been away, and the fear is huge. But whether you've been laid off from a high level, coming straight off the prison yard, maybe you've never worked in the legal economy before, we have experienced that the biggest barrier that our candidates face is fear. That's it, fear. And it comes and it goes and it comes back. And if we don't deal with it, we've all seen it. And I'm sure that your heart has broken over watching the life of someone who has made just amazing progress. Growing in the Lord, growing in the Word, reconnecting with family, staying clean and sober. I mean, just incredible growth over a period of months, even a period of years. And when that fear crops up, haven't you seen it? In a matter of days, in a matter of weeks, things unraveling that you didn't think could unravel. So fear is vicious. And in this process of job search, it rears its head a lot because we're going out and discovering employers who don't need us. We're going out and putting ourselves on the line. So we deal with fear, and we deal with it early. We deal with it often. The other dynamic that's in this foundations part is motivation. One of the things that we never assumed, I think I'm so grateful that we never assumed this, because a lot of programs miss the mark. We never assumed that our people had a clear motivation for work. We never assumed that the people that we worked with had a clear vision of why they should work, why work added value to their life. I always figured if they knew the value of work, well, those are my coworkers, and those are my colleagues. But the people that I'm here to serve, they don't have this vision for work. And so rather than assuming they should already be motivated, we assume that part of our job is to help them catch a vision for work. And we start early, and we constantly are coming back to what's in it for you to work. What about your daughter? It's everything from proving someone wrong to making someone proud to, you name it. People are motivated by all sorts of different things. But to tap into their very unique motivation and teach them to even keep themselves motivated toward work is a wonderful, powerful work, part of what we do early and all throughout the process. We also deal with decision-making skills, attitude adjustment, those sorts of things early on and constantly. Life work planning. Life work planning, sometimes called career planning. The question that it asks and answers is, how can I do work that works for me? Actually, Wayne, many of you I think probably know Wayne. I got a chance to meet him in Florida back in May. He shared a story about a young man. He had been invited, I think, to dine in this house of a family in the community. And I think it was a single mom still at work, kind of making her way home. But there was a young man in the kitchen, I want to say 15 years old, and he was whipping up dinner, right? And Wayne says to him, wow, you really look like you know what you're doing. Gosh, that smells good. I can't, wow, this smells great. And saw the kind of glow, like in Ed. He saw this glow come over this kid's face. And he says, you ought to think about being a cook one day, maybe being a chef or something. Well, fast forward to several weeks later when Wayne encounters this young man again. Hey, how's it going? What's new? What's going on? This kid says, hey, I've been thinking, I think that one day I'm going to be a chef. I think Wayne could have said, be a clown, be a horse rider, be a NASCAR. Whatever Wayne said on that day was going to be this kid's vision for his life, because nobody had really spoken that vision into his life. So life work planning is all about asking new questions. Not what did you used to do on your last job? Why aren't you working? What skills do you have? No. We start with the big picture. We ask all new questions. Very often when we help people find jobs, choose careers, we go immediately to skills. So what do you used to do? What jobs have you had before? Well, what do you enjoy doing? What can you do? We're just all about skills, as if we can say, so here's what you can do. Oh, here's a job that needs that. That's a good match. People sometimes take jobs because they can do them, but guess why they leave? Because they don't actually like working with those people, because the commute's way too long, because they feel like they're being asked to do something that is outside their moral boundaries. There's lots of reasons why we leave, but it's not usually because of skills. So as we help people choose work and catch a vision for work, yes, we want to look at the skills they have and enjoy using, certainly. But we want to take a look at their fields of fascination. What is intriguing to you? What would you do for 40 hours a week for free? Did you know that people get paid to do that? You could get paid to talk on the phone, to meet people, to cook, to eat, to be outdoors, to crunch numbers and make everything just perfect. I have a friend, her special natural skill is finding what's wrong with everything. She's critical like I've never seen before. But I'll tell you what, she's a consultant and she is brilliant. Because she can look at a situation, find all the reasons why it doesn't work, and help you get it right. And she's going to do it whether you pay her or not. So you might as well get a job doing it, right? I mean, there are people who can cook. And they've never been paid for it, but why not cook? Why not work with kids? Why not do that thing that you just can't get enough of anyhow? And then let's take a look at the values. What about values? We've got people who are hanging on to sobriety. They're getting clean and sober, and that is incredibly important. We've got people who've been in prison and decided they don't want to go back there anymore. We've got people who, I work with a lot of women who have fought hard to get their children back, right? Or to get in some housing, and they want to maintain those things, right? These are most important. Maybe you don't want a long commute. Maybe you only want to work the hours when your kids are at school. Maybe you want a flex schedule so you can switch a shift off so you can be at that soccer game. Maybe you want a real steady schedule so you're never working an evening or a weekend. All sorts of values to consider. So these are the 3 ingredients of a good job match. Many of the people that we work with, they have never entertained these questions. The state says you need to be working. Here's 3 crummy job leads. Which one you going for first? It's very minimal, and there's very little visioning, and there's very little consideration for the values. And when people get a job that is outside, that is not fascinating, or that runs contrary to their values, it's no wonder they don't keep it very long. So this really impacts job retention as well. It's just great stuff. We start with the big picture of life-work planning. Now, you see in the picture here, we start with foundations and life-work planning. Once people know where they'd like to be down the road, and we're going to help them choose a next step. If one day they decide they'd really like to be in nursing somehow, LPN, RN, but there's a road to travel to get there. What they can do right now is cook. Where should they be cooking? Hospital. Convalescent home, right? Not rocket science, is it? Pretty simple. If one day they think they want to, what? I had a woman come to me in a training the other day. I'm working with this young woman. I don't know what to do with her. I can't get her off her little dream. She wants to be a WNBA star. I keep telling her that is never going to happen, girl. And she said, what should I do? I can't get this woman to let go of this dream, young woman. I said, well, what if you just went with it? What if you said something like, in the WNBA, the neat thing about the WNBA is thousands of people are making a living. Some of them actually get to touch basketball. But you got receptionists and concession stands and cooks and drivers and massage therapists. You got clerical workers and salespeople and PR and caterers and marketing. And I mean, she's got to have something in her hands right now she can use somewhere in the industry. It's so much more fruitful to go with the thing that fascinates them, right? Had a man come to me in a training in Denver recently, and he was upset also about a candidate. He says, I've got this candidate, older man, reads at a 3rd grade reading level, and it's not going to get any better. And thank you, CSI. Now he wants to be a forensic scientist, and he will not let go of this dream. We've met twice. I'm trying to get him to give it up, and he won't. And I thought, well, good for this guy for hanging on to his dream despite his career coach. And I said, at the end of this training, he kind of caught a vision for all this, and he stood up, he said, this is my biggest lesson. I'm going to go back and I'm going to actually listen to the dreams of the people that I'm working with, because I spend a lot of time telling them why it's not my vision for their life, so it ain't happening. I don't have a lead for that, so choose again. But he said, you've all heard about this man that I work with, wants to be a forensic scientist. He said, you know what? I actually don't think he's ever going to be a forensic scientist. But you know what I learned this week? I learned that he could be a driver and take specimens from the crime scene to the lab, or from the lab to the lab, and be happy as anything. He could be a driver in the field of criminal justice. I think he could be a cleaner at the courthouse and love it. And when you ask him what do you do for a living, he's not going to say I'm a cleaner. He's going to say I work down at the courthouse. I'm part of the criminal justice team here in Denver. He's just going to go with it. And this is what we do. Find something that pulls them forward, backtrack and say, where can you start? What do you have in your hands right now? Now we take a look at their barriers. And we look at any barrier that may be used to screen them out. And we get real picky. Because who decides what's a barrier? Overwhelmingly, the employer decides what's a barrier and what's not. Throw out a few ideas. What are some of the reasons why people don't get the job? What's the employer going to use against them? Past mistakes, gaps in work history, reasons for leaving. They're in a new state every 2 years. That's distracting. I just think you're leaving. Call me shallow, but I'll just cut my losses now, right? Criminal convictions. If a drug and alcohol, that stuff comes up. I had a candidate I worked with a while back, a long time ago, left her last job because she had a baby. Which is fine, it happens. Happened to me twice now. Left the job before that because she had a baby. Job before that left because she had a baby. And the job before that she left because she had a baby. And there was only room for 4, so I have no idea how many kids there actually are. But she stayed at every job about 16 to 19 months. From the employer's perspective, I'm thinking, and I said to her, this is not legal for me to ask about from the employer's perspective. But I'm thinking it, and I'm cutting my losses right now. I'm saying, do you have any questions for me? Well, thank you. We'll give you a call. I'm wondering about this, even though I can't even ask it. All sorts of things will keep us from getting the job. So we do get very picky. Not here to do a full training, but I do want to give you a couple nuggets of gold while I am here. Think like the employer. We have a superhero. If you ever get to go to one of the Here's Life Intercity WorkNet trainings, you'll meet him. His name is PadMan. And PadMan teaches us and reminds us to think like the employer. PadMan. His name stands for the 6 most important areas of employer focus: presentation, ability, dependability, motivation, attitude, and network. We could spend a lot of time here, but I wanted to give you the snapshot and to say a couple things. Every reason an employer hires someone or fires someone comes down to one or a combination of these areas. Every reason they promote some employees, demote others, screen people in, screen people out, comes down to one or a combination of these 6 areas. So we use this in several ways. We've got an Overcoming Barriers card sort game that incorporates this. We've got some of our fast track materials. One is called Screened Out. Why can't I get the interview or the job? That incorporates this. And we use this PadMan idea to do a couple important things. One, we identify a candidate's barriers in every single one of these areas. And we get real picky. Presentation, how you look, but also nonverbal communication. Your verbals, do you have a really strong accent that I have a hard time understanding? Do you use a bunch of slang? Prison slang? Okay, that's going to be a distraction for me. In terms of your ability, can you do the job or can you learn it? In terms of dependability, not only will you be here every day on time, but can I trust you? Do I trust you to be honest with me, mature and stable? I'm leaving my baby, my company in your hands. Do I trust you to work in my best interest? Motivation, not only are you a go-getter, but it's really about company goals. Do you know what we do? Do you care what we do? Do you understand that your job is to take that job description and make your boss look good and make the company run smoothly and make your department successful? Are you going to be, well, that's not my job? Because I don't want to hire, that's not my job. I want to hire and other duties as assigned, okay? I want to hire somebody who's here to make it work in the big picture. Motivation, attitude. I really want someone who feels like us, who fits into our company culture, our company personality. And you know, some companies, They're shiny happy, right? And I'd fit in fine in a shiny happy company. Some companies are very, very sophisticated, and I don't know how well I would do there. Some companies are real family-oriented. Others are real trendy or modern or real green. So take a look at the company culture. You know, a person can be able to do the job, but if they don't fit into the company culture, they're going to have a tough time. And their coworkers will have a tough time. And it's hard to go 40 hours a week to a place with a bunch of people where you don't really fit in. So let's look at it. And then finally, network. You know when you date someone, I don't know how many of you are single, but when you date someone, you don't just get them. You actually get their little world. You meet people you might not otherwise have met. Now, when you marry someone, admit it, you did not just get them, did you? You got this package deal, for better or worse, till death do us part. When you hire someone, guess what? You don't just get them. You're getting this slice of the community. So my question is, who do I get when I hire you? And is that good for my business, or do I think you're going to bring the wrong element? Will you connect with my customers? Or will they not realize you work here when they walk by looking for someone because you don't seem to connect with them? Network. These are the 6 areas employers care most about. We identify a candidate's barriers in each of these 6 areas. We also look at their strengths in each of these 6 areas. When they look at a job lead, an opportunity, instead of just saying what skills are they looking for, what experience do they want, they say, what's the presentation for someone in this job? And do I have it? Am I willing to do that 40 hours a week? You know? Can they depend on me? Do I care enough about what they do to choose them over going home early? You know, to choose them, about being honest with them rather than cutting my family a break. I mean, am I going to choose them? So we're just going to look at the job lead in all of these areas and say, am I a fit for them, and are they a fit for me? And see if we can't find that job match. We use this to identify barriers, and then we help our candidates create solutions for every single one of their barriers. This is exciting stuff. No one is unemployable. What do you think of that statement? No one is unemployable. I think for most of us, 2 things fly through our mind. I'm not sure what order they come to your head in, but one of them is, wow, where does she work? She has not met some of the people that I've met. I mean, I like it, but I'm not so sure about that. I've met a few people who I'm not sure are actually employable. But there's another part of this that says, I like that. I love the spirit of that. And you know what? I've met 1 or 2, and I'm not sure how they're doing, but I'm going to hang on to that idea. We have to watch our mindset. No one is unemployable. We also believe that there is no barrier that cannot be overcome. There is no barrier that can't be overcome. That does not mean I can change your age or make your criminal history go away or give you work experience that you don't have. But I'll tell you what it does mean, that there are people who face that and more, who are working in the U.S. business culture today, who are succeeding in the world of work today. If they can do it, well, we know it can be done. The question is, will you let it happen in your life? No barrier can't be overcome. Here's our 5 ways of overcoming barriers. Lots of training behind it we could do, but let me give you a snapshot. People can learn a new skill. You may work with people who don't maintain eye contact because of their family culture, their ethnic culture, where they came from. I work with a lot of people who've come out of prison. In prison, you don't make a lot of eye contact. In prison, what does eye contact mean? What does it signify? It's a challenge. It's a threat, right? So they don't want to go in the interview and threaten the employer, so they look away out of respect. But the employer thinks they don't want the job. They don't even care. They must be lying. They're hiding something. Maybe they need to learn to maintain eye contact. They may need to learn how to shake hands. We've all had the yucky handshake. Ow, that's hurting me. Got it, you're powerful. Or, you know, I've actually met people who I've been really impressed with. This guy's sharp. Wow, she really knows her stuff. And they, well, so nice to meet you. Oh, I didn't know. Just the limp, fishy. Totally changed my impression. It's terrible. I'm so shallow. But it makes such a big impression. Maybe they need to learn to dress for success in their company culture. They may need to walk differently or learn to be on time. In the U.S. business culture, on time is 5 to 15 minutes beforehand. And we're serious. If you have a 1 o'clock interview, you show up 5 to 15 minutes early. You have a 1 o'clock interview, don't come in at 11:42. I don't think, oh, she's ambitious. Oh, she wants the job. I think, is she confused? She thought it was noon. You know, oh, she has no life. She can sit around for 74 minutes waiting for things to happen. Do we hire people like that? It's very bizarre when you show up too early in the U.S. business culture. It doesn't show ambition. It shows either confusion or, I mean, in the U.S. business culture, people who can just wait around for an hour and a half for something to happen, that doesn't happen. We're manic. We're crazy. Many other people around the world call us the plastic people because of our obsession with bathing. In the U.S. business culture, you can smell like, you know, cinnamon, vanilla, maybe some flowers, women only, guys, sorry. You cannot smell like a human being. Not okay. Not acceptable. In other parts of the world, they think it's beautiful. We don't. Now, the problem is when our candidates come into the business world, if they do what comes naturally, if they greet and show up on time and show respect the way they do in their home culture, which works perfectly, it may not get them very far in the business culture. So we want to help them become bicultural, honor who they are, but be able to fit in. We call it fitting in without selling out. Fit into the world of work without selling out who they are, so they can succeed and reach their dreams. But there's a lot of skills to be learned. They might need to adjust their outlook. Maybe it's their own thinking. I'm never going to. Once the employer finds out, well, I'm too old, I'm too young. If that thinking is holding them back, I mean, they've already got employers who are picky. They don't need to hold themselves back also. They may need to adjust their own outlook about their possibilities. They might need to look in a different place. If these employers are going to have a big problem with where they're coming from or what they bring, well, what if we looked in this industry or this part of town? We're just going to look for employers. This is a quick way to overcome barriers. Don't change the person. Find an employer who isn't distracted by it. You know, if they have a terrible credit history, well, avoid companies that do a credit check. And that's not to say deceive the employers. Oh, go for the ones who don't know any better. But there are employers who say, that's not that important to it. It's not important enough for me to invest the money. You know, I'm willing to take people from what I know to change where you look. It's a great way to overcome barriers. There are some barriers that cannot be made to go away. The employer will know about them. All the stuff in the past, all those gaps, all those reasons for leaving, the criminal history, the workers' comp claim, the fact that they haven't finished their GED or don't have a certificate needed for the job, whatever that is, it's going to come up. The employer will have concerns, and the candidate needs a good answer. We teach our candidates to create good answers. Honest, but to use language that won't scare the employer away. And we work with people who have had some extreme things to explain. I've worked with people who have been in prison for killing people. And they're on the outside now, and they don't want that to happen again, and they're trying to rebuild their lives. And so we help them explain. When 11 years ago, I made the worst decision of my life. I became angry. I let it, get the best of me, and I took someone's life. But we would say take someone's life. And that's why I was with the California Department of Corrections. Rather than I killed someone, and that's why I was in prison. I mean, just removing the language so that the employer can have the best chance of hearing that difficult story, but continuing to listen. I'm the employer, you're you, let's do a mock interview. Tell me about yourself, I'll say. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. I say, good answer. Wrong meeting. Okay, that meeting's down the hall. Woohoo! I'm glad that you're in recovery. I think that's great. But in the employment interview, I'm actually wanting to know if you can do the job. So we have to go back over these stories because sometimes the stories they have to tell about themselves are so riddled with jargon and distraction that the employer can't see past it. Sometimes it's so riddled with Christian jargon that it's just hard to understand. What am I really getting here? And so we try to just help them choose language that does honestly represent them so they get to choose how far they take it, but also allows the employer to continue to listen. So instead of I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic, they might say, you know what, either I grew up in a drinking family, and I started drinking at a young age, and a couple of years ago I just decided, man, I want to live like this. Or we have people who would say, when I was young, like a lot of people, I made some bad choices, started drinking too much. I even started using some drugs. But, 6 months ago, I just decided, man, I don't want to live like this. So they just take out some of the jargon so the employer can hear it. The last one is a resource. Sometimes what the people need is bus passes, a tool belt, a certain kind of clothing. They need dental work or glasses, those sorts of things. And we partner up a lot to provide those. So these are our 5 solution tools, and honestly, in the last 20 years, 15 years that we've been using them very actively, we haven't found a barrier that couldn't be overcome with these tools. And then we get to the job search. The job search is designed to screen people out. The job search is designed not to even see us as people. We check mark one box in the application. Oh, I know all about you. No thanks. So we've really got to turn the job search on its head for so many of the people that we serve. We need to help them find side doors to get into the employer. For example, with the application. If I'm working with someone who, for any reason, looks bad on the application, criminal conviction, no GED, not currently working, there's 100 ways to look bad on an application. Here are the 2 things I would teach that person about applications. 1, how to fill it out honestly, solidly, as good as it can possibly be done. And 2, way more important, you ready for this? How to avoid it as long as possible. It's very simple. We often will teach people to job search by going out and filling applications. You can't even get a job with an application. It is not possible. No one has ever read an application and said, he's brilliant, call him and tell him he's hired. The best you can get is a phone call or asked in for an interview. So what if they could get a phone call before the distraction of the paper? What if they could get an interview before the employer saw that check mark box? That's our goal. Raise your hand if you have ever gotten an interview before you filled out an application. Anybody? Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten a job offer before you filled out an application. It happens all the time, and this can happen for our candidates. So we just want to be clever, not dishonest, but just smart in the way that we teach them to job search. Do the things that we would do for ourselves and for our friends and be that creative. In the WorkNet model, we have a career success mentoring component, a post-placement component, because for us, that's where all the good stuff really happens. We want to take everyone through at least one planned career move. Some people know how to get a job. Some people know how to get a job and keep a job. The average American doesn't actually know or have a plan for how to get a better job, how to advance your career. That's foreign territory for a lot of us. And so we want to help everybody make at least one planned career move. For a lot of people that I have worked with over the years, if they're in a job and they realize they want that job, what's the first step in getting that job? Well, quitting the one you've got. Can't job search with all this going on, right? No, we want to teach them to actually job search while they're working. One of the things I get to say to candidates when I work with them is, one of our hopes for you is that this is the last, and this is such a great idea, this is the last time in your whole life that you ever job search from an unemployed standpoint. Wouldn't that be great? If they could learn to make a planned career move, if they would not burn those bridges, if they would get the letter of recommendation, it's wonderful, but it's a skill. So we really want to cultivate that skill and help everybody make at least one planned career move. And you see it's a really comprehensive model. There are 2 ways that we happen to deliver all of these services to job seekers. One is with our journals, and this is curriculum that's for the job seeker. There are a series of 10 journals. They're very comprehensive. They represent about a 4-hour time frame in a group where everybody would be working this process together, but keeping it very interactive, very kind of relevant. And this is a very intensive walk through every single one of those pieces, from life work planning all the way through job search. And then there's a Working for Advancement journal. There's a Succeeding in the Business Culture journal that really is about taking them into the world of work. We also, in the last couple of years, have developed these fast tracks. The journals run 16, one of them is 16 pages, but all the rest are 20, 24, 28 pages. Really a comprehensive approach. The fast tracks, 4 pages. Flexible, quick, very practical. In the journals, we're able to get under the surface a little bit. We deal more with belief systems and attitudes, underlying fear. In these ones, we can only do so much of that or it doesn't remain fast, but very practical and still a good approach, but very, very flexible.